welcome to Yellow with Susu. Tonight's guest is Chef Raymond Shveida. Hey, Ray.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on the podcast.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the culinary world?
Yeah, sure. Of course I can. A little bit about my background. I was born and raised in the Metro Detroit area. Um, Typical Midwestern, style here. But the key factor that I had was a lot of friends and my mother too. So we all come from a Polish heritage, and it was always big events around holidays or even on the weekends for cooking, which seemed to be the centerpiece of the entertainment of having guests over. And even as a young child, we were always put to work. And that was either you're cleaning something, peeling something, chopping something, or stirring something. So I was started off very, very early in my mother's and my grandmother's kitchens and my aunt's kitchens. So it just kind of was instilled in me at a very young age. And it didn't come out until later when I decided that I wanted to be a chef. I always just had the knack for it. And I always loved food. And, I attribute my mother to a big part of my palate, because she never just stuck. I mean, we always had the standard Midwest meals, or the family of five meals, but she would always try different foods and cook a lot of different stuff from different ethnicities. And especially with all her friends and her people that had worked with at the time, and experiencing those different types of food and then bringing them home and then having us try them. So I was very adventurous in my palate very early. I don't think there was not a thing that I didn't like to eat or I didn't want to try, which kind of set me up. And as I got a little bit older, I found it that hanging out with friends, even as I moved into my late teens, I noticed a lot of people wouldn't know how to cook, or would open up their parents' pantries and see all the spices or whatever dry goods, canned goods, whatever's in the fridge, and didn't know what to do with it. And I always was the one who was just making food for everybody on the weekends or whenever we're hanging out. They're just like, how do you just know how to
How do
just
you know to do
open?
everything? That's so nice.
Yeah,
So basically, so it was your mom and your grandma who inspired you to
yeah,
cooking.
definitely.
Okay, and you said you come from a Polish background, so you know how to make all those Eastern European types of food.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's really interesting because I personally know you. I know that you do know how to cook dishes from different ethnicities, which I think is amazing because especially me, I'm Middle Eastern, and you know how to make quite a few Middle Eastern dishes, which is so impressive, which kind of brings me into my next question for you, Raymond. How would you describe your culinary philosophy? Is there something that drives you like to your approach in cooking?
Well, the philosophy that I've kind of adapted and I've been working on for a long time. And I remember I scribbled this down a long time ago, very early on in my career, and I'm still trying to put the polishing touches on it, but it goes along the lines as, um, the kitchen is my country of origin and food is my national language. Um, and that just kind of speaks on, I found it that no matter who you are, where you're from, food is the common denominator between everybody. And the best way to speak with people or to reach out to people or to understand people or to get to know people is through food. I mean, we use it for comfort in times of loss, grieving. We use it for celebrations. We use it to nourish our bodies. We use it as a sacrament sometimes. I mean, it's a language of its own. And I just I take that as my philosophy, and I like to absorb a lot from different cultures and people that I meet. And that was another thing growing up in the Metro Detroit area at the time in the early 2000s. There was what I think is, and I've traveled a lot um, in America, up and down the Eastern Seaboard, out west and in the Midwest, and I find the Metro Detroit area has a very unique melting pot, and it's a enclave of treasures. And I'm in the early 2000s making a lot of friends with a lot of Middle Eastern people, a lot of people from Eastern Asia, North Africa, South Africa, and always being invited to their homes and trying their dishes and always just wanting to absorb that and be a part of that and then share what I like with them and showing them like my food or what I like and stuff like that. And that's always built a lot of friendships, have built a lot of common ground and a lot of relationships with a lot of people over the years. And then I like to see how it's blossomed too in this area now. It's just there's so many of those different restaurants, there's so many varieties now, and it just that melting pot and that philosophy is all kind of like worked out where everybody you can go within a half mile and get something different from 100 different types of small pockets of communities and different types of food that range from something so specific to a certain city or a certain region of a country or something that's broader, like it's like sushi from Japan, which is kind of pretty broad for the whole island, even though there's multiple different types of food that come throughout all of Japan. And the philosophy behind that is like, I want to experience and I want also to have other people experience that. And I think that's what a lot of chefs and or restaurateurs get into this business is because they want to share something.
With all your experience traveling all over the world, it leads me into my next question. What are some of your favorite techniques or ingredients that you've worked with?
Well, favorite ingredients it's hard to put on, but I'm definitely heavy on the spice guy. I like aromatics. I like allspice. I like cinnamon. I like a lot of heat sometimes, depending. I like everything to be a little bit more on the herb side. I like sumac. I like oregano, which is a little bit more on the traditional side if you're on the European side of the fence. Um, but I like heavily spiced food, and that's what really has drawn me to a lot of North African food and a lot of West Asian and East Asian food. Is that some of these dishes can be so simplistic and so direct and forward, but then also have a large depth of flavor based on their spice profiles that they use. And the common denominator, especially along the Middle East, is a lot of people like to use a lot of clove, allspice, and cinnamon, and that varies in which different types of protein that they're cooking or which starch they're pairing with that protein, if it's a stew or if it's like a grilled piece of meat. Um, but I think across the board, I like chilies. I like hot stuff. I think that's why I'm kind of drawn to that region of the world is just the heat and the kick of it. And that as far as the techniques, another part of that, and then also in a lot of South America, and then also even in South of North America, is traditional cooking methods. I'm really drawn to, even if you look into like American barbecue, is kind of like a gaucho Argentina version of doing barbacoa, like pit barbecue, which they've also do in the Middle East and a lot of places in Africa, where it's hardwoods buried in a pit, and it's all regional with what wood you're using. Even comes down to the soil, even what you're wrapping to preserve the moisture and such proteins in, whether it's like banana leaves, whether it's like you know a foil or whatever you have on hand or a ceramic clay pot, that all adds levels to the dish. And I think that technique that these people have been using for thousands of years is still on point, the highest cooking levels to this day.
How do you stay inspired and, keep innovating in your cooking?
I like to go on the internet and peruse a lot of different dishes from whatever I'm into, right? Like let's say like right now, I've been into a lot of Korean food. I've been doing a lot of Korean food at home. Um, and I'll get on the internet and I'll turn into a wormhole where I'll start researching and I kind of refine my searches and what I'm looking for is um, I don't like anything too, glammy or shorthanded. I'm always looking for something that is more on the traditional side. So if someone's saying that their grandma did it this way, I'm probably going to lean towards that.
Okay.
Something that's more on the traditional side. And just constantly relentlessly like searching and looking for different things and quote unquote trying to reinvent the wheel. But I mean, I can go over and over the same things and find something different each time. And it's just all about being diligent and doing your research. And I have a lot of literature too, a lot of what we call kitchen Bibles, and which are basic like guidelines to a lot of things, which are the structure of how the process of how certain things go. And it's almost scientific. And that gives you a formula. And then once you have the basic knowledge of these formula and you have these formulas remembered, you know them by heart, then you can start to move around the globe. Then you can start to look and see other things and be like, you know what? This all fits and this is how this is layered, and then add this to that. And it's just kind of like I would like to say it's almost like painting a picture every time. That's what I kind of look at it as, or writing a song. You're composing something, and you're just putting the pieces together, and it's kind of thrilling, and it's like the experiment process too. When you're doing stuff, I do a lot of stuff at home on the weekends for my wife or family and friends, and that's the experimental run.
Right. Well, I'm sure your family and and like you said, just being a husband, cooking for your wife, cooking for your family, I'm sure that has to inspire you just to be able to do that and just feed your family and try different things. And like I said, most people I meet, they don't cook different culture foods. They're usually really good in um, whatever they grow up with. So when I meet people who, like you, who can make all these different dishes from across the world, and like you said, you grew up in Michigan, and a lot of people they might have never been to Michigan or understand, but I completely agree with you. It is a huge melting pot, and the nice thing about it is you have all these different cultures and different ethnicities and they all do so well and like you said I've been doing a lot of Korean myself. I'm actually going to be cooking some more Korean short ribs coming up soon and like you
Oh,
said
nice.
yeah so but the first time I tried it then I changed a couple things and every single time it's becoming better but like you said you learn with practice and go with that so that's really interesting as well.
Well, the passion comes from it too. Is what I said before. Is I'm a people pleaser, and I love to see someone's face. And it's like a sort of instant gratification when you present someone, whether it's a stranger, whether it's your mother, whether it's your significant other, and it's something that you came up with and then you put all this heart and soul into, and to see them and look into their eyes and see the grin on their face and just look at them and see pure joy in their face. There's nothing else like that. It's very pleasing, and you feel like, a sense of accomplishment, and you feel happy for them. It's a strange feeling, but I love it, and it's just, I love to be of service, because as much as I'm a service to a lot of people, I've been in a lot of brick and mortars, I've done a lot of catering, everything else. As much as I've done for people, they've also done for me, because at the same time, they might be experiencing something new from me, but I'm also learning and experiencing something new from them, because what's usually centered around these meals, and usually when I have to go out on the floor or talk to someone, is a conversation. And then you find that middle ground, and then they either tell you, oh, this reminds me of this, and it leads into a story, and you get a little bit of background on someone. It's usually family related. And same thing with me. I like to bring up my experiences with my family and me growing up, and that usually opens up other people to tell me their experiences. So, and then you get to learn a little bit about them, their preferences and what they use, and then they open up about their recipes or what generations before them used to do, or techniques. And that's like really how you end up learning a lot about how people go about creating dishes, because you can go on the internet and look up 100,000 recipes for the same dish, and they're all going to probably be different. And most of them are probably not going to be that great. Um, I'm
That's so funny you said that, because that is so true. Excuse me, that is so true, because some people, sure, they like to cook, but not everybody has a true palate for flavor. I have found a lot of recipes on the internet, and I've had to change them to make them a little bit better, because also, my mom is a chef, so I understand exactly what you're talking about. You have to learn about spices and different techniques, so I can completely understand that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even to this day I have handwritten hand-me-downs of recipes from my late grandmother, and then her mother and her family before her too. It was kind of just everybody in my family was like, well, if anybody's going to appreciate it, it's probably going to be Ray. Um, but it's been like word of mouth, and that's something that is so tribal, so primitive, that it's at the core of the human essence in every culture across the world. And you find people even here in America, across the Midwest, or even if you go to Los Angeles or you go to New York, family recipes are safely guarded, especially if someone has something that's really sought after, whether it's a pie recipe, a casserole recipe, or, something, their secret technique or something they add to something. And they never write it down, or they write it down and then the rest of the family just doesn't, they overlook it. And then it's lost forever. And that's why I love to pick people's brains and talk about their experiences, their family experiences, and see what what's different, or what's the common denominator from across the board from other information that I've got. It's almost like a scientific method that I have with trying to um, put together regional spices, palate, what people are looking for palate wise when they're eating a certain type of food from a certain region. Um, but I love it. It's just like it's putting together like a huge jigsaw puzzle with bright and vibrant colors, and that which are the flavors, and everything else. It's remarkable.
Well, what you're saying is absolutely true, because the real way to learn a dish is through talking to people. For instance, I just saw something online where I think it was an East Asian girl. I don't know if they were Korean or exactly what, and they wanted to make a West Asian dish, which West Asian is Middle Eastern. They were trying to make grape leaves, and I was like, "That's amazing. The girl's trying," but you have to roll them a certain way. You have to add the spice a certain way, because even though you're trying, if and you've made grape leaves, which we call what the wali or what inab, or
Or
a lot of Chaldean
Goma.
people, yeah, Chaldean people call it dolma, and I think like Persians call it dolmatis or something like that in the Greeks. But talk to people, learn, because yes, you can learn from the internet, which is good, but you really need to speak to people, because I don't think the girl was rolling the grape leaves right. And that's one of the main things about making dawali is the roll and the grape leaf, because that is how you keep the flavor, and that is how the taste actually comes out. So even like you said, sure, you can learn from the internet, but talk to people from different cultures, learn, maybe sit with somebody where you can actually whatever sit down and roll grape leaves, or learn a Polish dish, Italian dish, or some kind of African dish or of some sort. That is, I will completely agree with you, sitting with the family, trying the traditional types of things is the way to go, which I was going to ask you your thoughts on this, since it seems you're such, and I would imagine that every chef is, since you are so traditional. What are your thoughts on the roles of technology in modern cooking nowadays?
Ah, that is um, something that I kind of am on the fence, and I'm 50-50 on that. There are certain devices and stuff that are applicable that I find are helpful, especially if someone doesn't have the time. Like, especially it depends on what you're doing. So if you're at a catering situation, or if you're in a restaurant, like a short order situation, and time is of the essence, a lot of uh, these things can shorten the technique or shorten the cook time, which is great. And then, you're not losing that much of the flavor or that much of what brings out the dish. Like, say, a lot of dishes that are slow cooked for long periods of time. And then you want to do, like, a marinade, and you decide to go with sous vide. Now, I have a sous vide wand. I love my sous vide wand. I love my vacuum sealer too. It's a great way to marinate and tenderize something in a short period of time without waiting days for it. And then also, if you're not that good on a grill or in a saute station or a broiler, and knowing your temps and knowing how to eyeball and how to feel out your protein and know when it's to the correct temp, the sous vide takes all that guesswork out of it. I like to use it, especially when I'm catering private parties, because the logistics of me being prepping and then traveling to the location and then setting up for dinner in a short amount of time, this allows me to pre-cook it. It's marinated, it's cooked to the precise temperature that my clients want it to, and I'm able to show up and be able to sear it off and bring it up to a warm temp within a matter of minutes. And I think that's a great tool to have in your repertoire. I don't think that it should be used all the time. There's a lot of stuff that it's really not good for. It does render fat nicely, but not as nicely as direct heat, or uh, cooking something in a ceramic pot. You're not getting that proper caramelization because it's cooking at such a low temperature. So it has its faults, but then it also has its pros. And then also, what I can say is, too, one of my lifesavers, which I love, the greatest piece of technology to come out, is the wireless probe, which you can have hooked up through Bluetooth on your phone. So if you've ever done a prime rib roast that's encrusted, it's you're dealing with family or your client, and it's New Year's Eve or Christmas, and now this is not the time to fall short. the, the wireless
Right?
probe, especially when you're doing something like that, and you're usually probably steam baking it at, like, 250, 275. This will alert you and let you know when the center is perfectly cooked. So you're not sitting there with your eyes on the oven. And then also, too, a lot of people love to just open the oven, stick their thermometer in. Nope. Okay, I'm going to guess 10, 15 more minutes. Well, every time you're opening that oven, you're letting steam out. You're drying out your dish. So the portable probes or the cordless probes, or if you're lucky enough to have a combi oven with a probe that's inside of it, um, takes away you opening up the oven, which is cooling down your dish, delaying how long it takes to cook, and it's removing any kind of moisture that needs to keep it moist inside. Um, and I think that's, like, one of the greatest things that have come out of kitchen utensils. As far as the little gizmos and the cutters and stuff, I do find the little handheld strawberry and tomato hullers are genius. Especially, I have a huge garden. I do a lot of canning and jarring, and for just being able to core and take out the tomatoes, that little tiny $3 instrument that is mass produced and you wouldn't think to have in your drawer, is actually a huge time saver than using a paring knife.
Well, no, I mean, you, like I said, you have your own garden, you have all these types of things, which sometimes a little technology goes a long way. So I can completely, um, understand that. And of course, there are some dishes that it's going to be handmade, which I was going to ask you, and then we'll get into a couple more questions. But steak, because I'm Middle Eastern, so lamb, steak, beef, these types of things is mostly what is in most of our dishes. Of course, obviously with vegetarian types of food, but a steak. There's so many ways to cook a steak. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, I can see it done in a pan, but that's gonna, if you don't have proper ventilation in your house, you're gonna make a mess. And also too, I don't I don't like the caramelization you get out of a pan sometimes, unless your steak you're aiming for something like a steak Diane, which is gonna have a cream sauce over it anyway. But my preferred method, and my wife really likes it too, is very simplistic. You get a nice marbleized piece of steak. You're looking for your porterhouse, your T-bone, or your New York strip. Make sure it has lots of fat running through it. Very simple spices. All I use is three different things: garlic powder, cracked black pepper, and then I use sea salt. And then I do it on the grill. And propane's fine, but I prefer either hardwood or charcoal, because charcoal and hardwood gives it just that little bit of smoke. And when you're rendering it on the grill, if you start to see those flames come up from the fat dripping, that's okay, but you want to move it quickly away from those flames, because a little bit of that smoke is fine, but too much leads to a carbon buildup on your steak, which is going to give your palate a very dry taste when you eat it.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a very I agree with you because when I grill, it's charcoal. And depending if we decide to smoke something, that's once in a while because it is different when you're using a smoker, when you're using the grill. Like you said, everything that you do or add changes the flavor in something.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I was
Absolutely.
and then I was going to ask you too, what was the last dish that you made?
The last dish that I made was a seafood hot pot. And uh, there is a chain, or I believe it's a chain, across national chain. It's called H Mart, an Asian chain. So it's a Korean hot pot. When I decided to do seafood with it, and the store is fantastic. They have everything there from black pig's ear mushrooms, gnocchi mushrooms, fresh ginger root, down to all your fresh seafood that you can imagine: baby octopus, fresh oysters. So I just kind of did an array of like baby octopus, oysters. Um, I did fresh mussels, and then we also got some mako shark steaks. And then basically I started the broth with your basic like French mirepoix, but instead of celery, I added baby bok choy, which is basically like celery, and added ginger to it. And then I used fermented soy and chili paste, gochujang. And then I like Maggie's seasoning. It gives it a lot of that quick umami taste, rather than like using like tamari or soy. And it's basically, we did that, made the broth, dipped the seafood in it, and then we had sides of ramen noodles on the side to dip the broth into the ramen noodles, and then you could sit there and dip your seafood into it and cook it in the hot pot like that. And then we had, all the basic toppings: lime wedges, cilantro, scallions. So it was really, really good. And actually, for the price tag on it, was not bad at all, especially going to these markets like that. You can buy in smaller quantity. It's fresher. When you're buying in smaller quantity, you're not having leftover food. You're not paying so much money. So, and then also too, they had a great canned Thai coffee drink. And I love Thai coffee. And if you don't know what Thai coffee is, it's like condensed milk, which is super, super syrupy, and it's very sugary. And then it's like basically two shots of espresso over ice.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really, really
Well,
good.
I mean, Middle Eastern Arabian coffee, the whole Turk. I mean, you know how the coffee
Yeah,
comes.
Turkish coffee.
So
Yep.
yeah, so exactly. But no, I mean that sounds amazing. I'm sure if there's any listeners out here, they're gonna probably be so hungry after this episode. They're gonna be like, okay, maybe I should go make something. But no, like I said, it's very interesting because again, you're so skilled and not every chef is. Especially American chefs, you know, you are taking a chance and learning about all these different cultures across the entire world. And to me, I would imagine that that would just, make a chef so much better. But I was going to ask you, do you have, because I do love to make like East Asian foods, but again, I'm Middle Eastern, so I like the whole Mediterranean, like to stay healthy and all these types of things. Do you, is there a recommendation like a substitute for soy sauce?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're trying to remove. So soy, are you trying to remove the soybean itself? Or you're trying to remove the sodium level, or you're trying to remove the gluten?
Sodium. So I want to see, is there a better choice, like a more healthy choice? Let's say even if I want to make chicken fried rice, I make everything by hand and I'm like, oh, is there a better substitute, like healthier version of something like
There,
that?
there is, like I said before, Maggie seasoning has a similar profile. It is gluten free, it has less sodium, and it is soy free, and it brings out that umami flavor. And the difference between Maggie seasoning, and then you'll also be able to find it too as soup seasoning or flavor glow. And basically, what the flavor that is comparable to the soy sauce is actually it's a caramelized yeast that they use that brings out that dark, rich color and then brings out that flavor profile. And like I said before, there's Maggie's, there's Flavor Glow. I think there's brown stock additive. You can find a lot of this stuff at your local grocery store. You just got to know what you can look for. It's basically caramelized yeast extract, and it's in these products. And a lot of people use them for their stocks. And you'd be surprised that a lot of those are in your favorite French onion soups. If you're doing stir fries, or like what I've done too with a lot of vegetables. Like I said, I've been on a huge like Asian kick. Is just mushrooms, bok choy, bell peppers, onions, a little bit of the Maggi seasoning, a little bit of rice wine vinegar. At the end of wilting down and sautéing everything in a pan, and then it will give it that little bit of sodium that you want, that little bit of umami, earthy flavor. A little bit goes a long way.
No, that's amazing. And one other thing too, what is, let's say, because what is your favorite dish? Well, obviously you're not gonna have a favorite dish. What are one of your favorite dishes you made? But then also, what is one of the hardest dishes that you had to make that was difficult to make that you've accomplished?
Oh, one of my favorite dishes. I would have to say it's going to go along the line of just some good old stuffed cabbage, which we call gumpki, which would be
Grumpy's. I've had those.
Polish Polish dolma.
Yeah. Polish dolma. That's hilarious. That is Polish dolma, but you've tried ours. We make something similar, but we make it in like a lemon.
Yep, the lemon sauce, which is I know a lot of it depends. Like I said, it depends on where you at. A lot of the lemon sauces can either be butter rich, or other ones can also be thickened with egg yolks, kind of like how the Greeks do with their avalemono, like lemon rice soup. But yeah, I know you guys, a lot of them over there do the lemon sauce, where we use like basically a tomato base. And then we also too, I don't think it's traditional for a lot of Arabian dishes, but we do a mix of pork beef blend in ours. In Poland, we eat a lot, and they eat a lot of pork. In a
They
lot of dishes, we eat a lot of pork.
Well, if anybody hasn't tried those, they are amazing. And I learned how to make those.
Did
Um,
you?
yes, I did, and I will have to have you try mine to just
Oh, I would
it
love
out.
to.
But for me, so most Middle Eastern people, even if you're Christian, most of us we don't. Pork is not a common pork is not a common protein for us, anyways. So if we do eat pork, like for instance, I'm Christian, but we really don't eat much pork, anyways, just once in a while. But with the how do I say it? Guamkis is how you is
Yeah,
the correct way?
Grumpy. Yep.
Guamkis, or because I always say galumpkies. Yeah, so I'm like, hey, it
That's the
sounds
That's the Midwestern
the
pluralizing
Midwestern.
everything that doesn't need to get pluralized.
That's everything. But no, they're very delicious, and I love how they're in the tomato sauce, and they're very good, and they're actually healthy, which is um we I think, what do they serve it with? Carrots and mashed potatoes on the side, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, usually, or some kind of roast. Yeah, the starch is usually some kind of roasted potatoes and or mashed potatoes, or like we'll sometimes if you're really at a nicer holiday event or at a family's house is probably potato pancakes, which are a little bit more hands on because it's pretty rough, like sitting there doing hand rolling stuffed cabbage for 20 people and then making handmade potato pancakes for
Oh
20
yeah.
people after that.
Guamkis does take a lot of time. We call ours malfouf, which again we don't use pork, but
Mhm.
it is made in that lemon sauce, just basically Mediterranean Greek style. But the Polish style is very good too, and it's healthy. Again, I've tried to make them. It takes a few hours for sure, but if anybody
Yeah,
out there hasn't ever tried it, it's definitely worth trying for sure. So I can see what you mean, because that dish, technically, if you were in one sitting, I would imagine that at least takes 5 hours between rolling them, prepping everything, dealing with the cabbage, and then cooking on top of that. That's at least
yeah,
a 5 hour. That's at least 5 hours out of your day just right there.
yeah. Yeah, and then as far as one of the hardest things I did, I was working in a restaurant downtown. So I was the stew chef there under
Downtown.
a very Detroit
Okay.
at the Element, and there was a club upstairs. It was basically an appetizer kind of joint, tapas kind of thing with like cocktails, and then but there was other faculties within the hotel that we were running. There was multiple boardrooms, other different halls, breakfast nooks, and everything. But I was doing a certain party, and we were doing whole roasted rack of lamb, and I had to French. I think it was like 20 or 30 whole racks, and now getting it Frenched is taking all that fat in between the bones, so cutting out in between the bones. So basically, you have your nice long rib bones, and then you have your center cut running down the middle, and then they're herb encrusted. So I think the callus on my index finger grew about a half of inch just from all the knife work that I had to do in the preparation for this dish. It was very time consuming. It was tedious. It was, meticulous, trying to make each one perfect. And if you work probably with a lot of lamb and seen a lot of different racks of lamb, you know that they're all not completely uniform. So they were all different cooking times. So you might have one that is 3/4 of a pound lighter than the next one. That one's going to cook faster than the one that is a pound more. So that was extremely challenging doing that dish for these people, on top of doing what you probably seen on TV they call a lamb sauce, which is actually just a demi glaze, which is basically rendered veal fat, rendered red wine, and usually a little bit of garlic, um, and getting that into a point where it has thickened and all the flavors have really condensed and became very rich. And I think that was like one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. And then actually the other second one, it also involves lamb chops because I had to do lollipop lamb chops, and I was doing 120 people, and they wanted a walking appetizer of lollipop lamb chops, all grilled. And I had two cases, which was approximately 80 pounds of rack lamb, and I had to individually cut, season, and grill them for walking appetizers, and they ate them like candy. So I had to keep them coming very fast.
Wow. Well, it takes, and again, Mediterranean food with the lamb, again, tradition, years and years and years and years of learning how to deal and cook with lamb. Not every culture does. And lamb is not, oh, let me just do this or do that with it. Lamb takes a lot of skill. So you have a lot of experience in different cultures and just all these different flavors and spices. That's why I assume, you're so good at cooking and everything. And again, too, you have done catering events, you've done fine dining, restaurants. Is there a difference between doing like private events?
Yeah, I'm kind of at this point in my career. I work for a corporate catering office. I wouldn't say office, company that we have contracts with automotive companies, and we run their facilities. And it's an early morning job, and it's like basically breakfast and lunch. It's basically what you would do for a hotel service with banquet captains, with breakfast and doing coffee services, and then providing lunch. So that's like big batch cooking, and everything has to come out uniform. So it's a lot of work right up until the moment before service to make sure that everything's on hand. And then also, I've been doing consulting work with a lot of people downtown Detroit that have purchased and are opening up new restaurants or old places that I've worked at that just need revamping or someone to come in and look at the facility, look at the menu pricing. That's kind of fun to do that because you kind of come in and you're like the guest and you get to meet who's working there. And, you don't have to be tied to that place. You're just coming in for 2 or 3 days and evaluating everything and giving your honest opinion on things and trying to help people and bring them, maybe show them something that they might be overlooking or help them along in their paths and the way they're going in their career. And then also too is doing private catering is from household to household, and it's that's really fun and that's very challenging too. Especially, I remember one of the first jobs I ever got was it was passed from my executive chef, and he didn't want to do it. It was a Christmas Eve dinner party for 50 people. Now, the gentleman was he was of a trucking company, and I think his kids were passed down the trucking company. So he was pretty well to do. I had never met him or his family before, and he was not expecting me. He was expecting my executive chef. And now my executive chef has at the time had a little bit of pull because he was on Hell's Kitchen, a Final Four contestant. So they were expecting this semi-celebrity big name to come in, and then here's Joe Schmo. So he's on the phone calling him, and he's like, "Don't worry, this guy's great. You're gonna have a good time." And it's really hard walking into someone's home with their family there, and then nonetheless, it's Christmas Eve. This is their holiday dinner. The pressure's on.
So since you are doing private catering events, you're helping other businesses create menus or meal planning, how can someone reach you? Where um do you have an Instagram handle? What's the best way to connect with you if a company or a family or any type of events would like to book you?
The best way right now would just be through my social media, which would uh, easily look up just my first and my last name, Raymond Shveida.
And what's your Instagram handle?
It's Raymond Shveida.
Okay. So if anybody out there wants to book Raymond Shveida, it's straight up Raymond Shveida, and that's Raymond.
Shveida.
Okay. And they can book you for company events, catering parties, um, private events, restaurant management, and all those things, which I was going to come back and ask you, since you have been doing this for so long, what advice would you give to aspiring chefs and cooks?
Uh, well, I like to say keep your knives sharp as well as your mind. Now, what that entails is along with keeping your tools tidy and sharp and being able to use them properly, is also making sure that your mind is also sharp. Early in my career, with the little bit of you know, reviews and write-ups and little spots on the news and stuff like that, you know, you start to get kind of like a complex. You get aloof. You think you know everything, and your brain gets dull. Um, and I found that when I really truly started to excel in what I do is when I realized that I don't know everything. I'll never know everything, and that I should never become complacent and I should never become stagnant, and that you should always strive to learn something new. And everybody in this world has something to teach you. It doesn't matter if it's your dishwasher, it's your busboy, it's your server, you know, it's everybody can teach you something. And when you're not receptive is the minute that you become stale and you don't really have that appeal like you do. You start to lose your luster. You have that lackluster. So you always got to be looking, keeping your mind sharp and focused and trying to learn something new. And you got to be open. I think that's one of the biggest things too, is especially when you're cooking for other people, if you have certain preferences to what you like or what you eat, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to have an easy time getting along or doing your job correctly. You got to have an open mind to what people want. You have an open mind to their delicacies, and you need to try it. You need to taste it. You need to be aware of what it's supposed to be like. Because there's a lot of instant pop-up stuff that you could do. And that might be great when you're at home about to turn on, you know, the TV or look at your phone. But when you're really striving to please people and make your way through the culinary world, you got to know what you're doing. You can't. There's no shortcuts. Don't take shortcuts. You got to do it the long way, and you got to, and you know, repetition and the technique is what matters.
And that really is some great advice, Chef Raymond. Um, that way people don't give up, always learn, keep an open mind. Just because you learn one thing doesn't mean you know everything, which I was going to ask you, do you have any upcoming projects or future plans? Are you going to be writing your own cookbook? Will you be trying to audition for any of these shows? Do you have anything like that in mind?
As far as um the limelight and for those shows, I don't think so. I think my chase for that kind of stuff um has kind of taken a backseat to family life and kind of just where I want to be at and have you know, the structure of my life now is very accommodating for a wife and the future family. And I'm kind of in that mindset now, being a little bit older. But I was just recently talking about doing a cookbook or maybe a memoir with all the goofy, crazy stories of my journey through many, many kitchens. Um, and I've also too is I love planning outward of doing private parties, and I was currently talking to someone. I had to put it off because of health reasons, but I was looking to doing a themed, you know, 5 course meal for a gentleman and maybe 10 or 9 of his friends, and they wanted each meal to be themed from a different musician from the '70s,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
yeah, so just like fun, like really fun stuff like that. I like the, you know, the really just, you know, it doesn't your dining experience doesn't have to be just give your order, get your food, eat your food, pay your bill. You know,
Right.
it can be an actual an experience. You know, you can hear things, see things, talk about things, taste things, feel things. You know, so that's what I would really like to push in the future is doing these unique private dining events. And then also we're also looking at doing some other festivals and stuff like that, and doing like paper ticket kind of events for different kind of categories, whether it's cannabis, or whether it's like bacon fest, or stuff like that. So that's on the horizon for me. But as far as doing anything, as far as like trying out for a TV show or anything else like that, I don't see
Not
it
your
in
style.
my future.
That's
Yeah, I'm
okay
like,
because like you said, you're a family man. And I mean, honestly, what is more important in this world? And there's nothing more important in this world than family. So
that's true.
money comes and goes. I always laugh because, success is about balance. To me, um, I would think that there is nothing more high value than a man who's focused on his family, his spirituality, his family, and just taking care of the people who are closest to him in his life. That to me is something I can respect. I respect you very much for that. And what I was going to ask you also, we had such an amazing discussion today, and thank you. And I hope anybody listening can learn from something like that and be inspired to go on and do something, or, follow their dreams as a chef, become a cook. And again, you wanting to still run your own company is amazing. Are there any shout outs or anything you would like to give to anybody? I know you said your mom inspired you. If you have any shout outs, feel free because now's the time.
I was going to say, I'd like to shout out to Chef Jared Bobkin. I'd like to shout out to my late grandmother. I'd like to shout out to my late brother. And then I'd also like to shout out to the Holy Spirit in the sky for taking care of me.
Oh, that's so amazing. And to me, when I talk to people, having spirituality, and especially the Holy Spirit, and for me, I'm actually Orthodox. Having faith is really what keeps you going. Having hope, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to be like. So being able to follow your passion and really to keep going is one of the most amazing things, because you don't know what's going to be ahead of you. Chef Raymond, thank you so much for joining our podcast tonight. It has been very amazing talking to you. I've had so much fun. I learned a little bit myself. I might go cook something, you know. But no, it was really nice talking to you and just being able to hear all these amazing things. And again, if anybody listening, you want to book catering or a private chef, it is Raymond Shveida. You can find him on Instagram or look him up. And
Yep.
thank you so much, Ray. Yella. It was so
Yella.
awesome. Yep, Yella. It was so awesome talking to you and really value the time. No, thank you so much for joining the podcast tonight. And I'm just really hoping that it can reach people and again fuel the mind, body, and soul. So very grateful to have you on. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you so much, Jeff.
No problem at all. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yella.
Yella.
Yella. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.